Pull up my notes. I gotta pull up my notes, because if I don't have my notes, we won't have a video. Hey guys, it's Jared from What Up Creative. How are you doing? So, for the last few weeks, I've been shooting with the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. I've really been trying to build out my rig to kind of suit my run and gun style. So what I wanted to do with you guys today is just kind of run you by how I've set up my own rig, so it can kind of give you guys some ideas of how you can set up yours to better suit your needs. So I'm just going to start with the camera by itself, and we'll build it up as we go. So the first thing about the camera that I noticed was that the camera only has two mounting points. It has this first mounting point here on the bottom, and it has a second mounting point here on the top. There is no other places to attach anything to the camera. And that is where I encountered my first problem, because I knew I was going to need more things. I mean, even if you just attached an SSD to this, that takes up your top hole, and then you have no options for anything else. So I knew I was going to need more mounting points, so I needed a cage. Side note here, guys, if you really did want to keep this as light as possible, you can actually, and I did, zip tie your SSD through one of these little strap rings if you wanted to. It works, it doesn't look great, but it functions. So the cage I went with was the small rig cage for the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. I got it with the top handle as well as with the Samsung T5 SSD mount, because that'll give us a whole lot more flexibility in what we're able to mount to this camera, including the ability to just mount the SSD directly onto the rig in a very secure fashion. And then we have to fasten in with the two included screws that go into the top and bottom mounting points. And once I have this in, I'm going to go ahead and mount my SSD in here. But before I do that, I'm going to store away the Allen key that I use to mount this right here into the bottom of the cage. That way, it'll stay always on the cage, so it's easy to remember where it's at. So I'm going to go ahead and mount my 500 gigabyte Samsung T5 SSD in here. That is what this mount was made to hold. So that's what I'm going to put in here. And you just slide it in very simply. And then it has some locking nuts to hold it in place. So you lock the first one closer to the SSD, and then what we'll do is we'll slide the cable in. So we just stick our cable in here, and then we don't want to tighten this too much, but we do just want to tighten this one down a little bit, and that will hold our cable nice and in place so that there's less risk of tugging the cable and breaking that connector, because that would be bad. Okay, that is done. Now, since this camera has no articulating screen and I can't tilt it or flip it, I am going to need at least some kind of monitor so that I can see the screen when I am using it at different angles. So I just went with the monitor that I already had, which is the Viltrox DC50. I have a video on this monitor. If you guys wanted to check it out, feel free. I'll have a link down in the description below. But basically, this is a very basic monitor. It's nothing great. It has essentially just the basics. Its color is not going to be accurate enough to monitor color off of. It's more just so that I'm able to see the screen when I'm at an off angle. So I just modified this to accept Sony NPF batteries. Simple modification by just dremeling out some space behind there so that it can accept the Sony NPF batteries. And then I mount this onto a magic arm. And then once I'm on the magic arm, I'm just going to screw this into the front of my top handle. Okay, once everything is screwed in nice and tight, I'm going to actually loosen up the magic arm so that I can move the monitor to the final position, which is going to be somewhere about right here. I'll tighten that up, and now our monitor is in place. Now I am hooking the monitor up with this very simple short HDMI cable. This is a ribbon type cable. I will have this linked in the description. It's meant to be super lightweight and not bulky like a lot of HDMI cables, but the thing you suffer for that is that it is going to be less durable, so you have to be a little more careful if you're going to use this. I might end up changing this as well as the monitor out in the very near future. So now we can see that our camera rig is starting to come together. It's looking pretty good. But one of the major issues we're having right now is that we have these cables hanging out on the side. And one thing, if you know from experience, using cables on your camera already is that when you have cables hanging out the side, they're super easily damaged. So we need something to protect these cables from getting damaged. And what I use to do that is one of these super cheap L brackets. I have had this thing for many years and never really used it, but what we're going to do is we're just going to mount this on the bottom of the camera, and it'll give us something that we can use to protect these cables, as well as give us an extra holding point as a handle or a good wrist rest point when you are focusing the lens. Okay, so now that we have our handle mounted, it's nice and sturdy. We'll straighten everything else back up, and you can see that gives a good protection for our cables so that nothing can bump them and break those connectors, because that is a very common issue if you don't have any kind of protection for your cables. Which brings us to the next step, which is lenses. And for my primary lens that I'm using on this camera is, I bet you guys couldn't guess it, the Sigma 18 to 35-1/8. This is the Canon mount version of this lens. Of course, an absolute beast of the lens, and almost every filmmaker has one of these because they're just so awesome. It will give me a pretty good focal range after I use the Viltrox EF to M2 adapter. This is a speed booster that will give me a 0.71 times crop on this. That way it will bring my 2 times crop micro four thirds sensor on this camera to more of a standard crop sensor, which makes this approximately like a 24 to 50. So guys, that's generally the rig. It leaves a lot still to modify it to your needs. It still has places where you can mount microphones either up here off of the handle, or you can do it over here underneath the controls. And because the grips on this are so good already, you don't have to have any kind of extended grip off to the side. You've got this over here as a dual grip if you want to hold it with 2 hands, or you can use it as a good brace when you're focusing, which is how I prefer to use it. You can also mount this on rails if you want to add other kinds of accessories. And with the speed booster, this gives you an effective light range down to f1.2. So this lens does super well in low light. That paired with the low light capabilities of the camera means that in most situations you're going to be able to shoot. And as far as shooting goes, on the lowest quality 4K settings, you're going to be able to get at least 3 hours of filming on the 500 gig Samsung SSD. So the only major downside to this rig is the batteries. These are currently using the internal batteries, which are the Canon LP-E6 batteries. It makes the rig super light, but extremely annoying to use in professional work because you're constantly running out of batteries. I actually am going to be making a video about my experience using this camera on a professional shoot. So if you guys wanted to check that out and see what I think about it, you can check out that video up there. But that is the primary thing that I'm working on trying to figure out next. Is I would love to use like a V-mount battery or something on this camera, and I'm trying to figure out a system to make that work, because that would make things a lot better is if I could replace this with a V-mount system without making this too bulky or covering up the screen or something like that. Something I'm thinking is maybe mounting it over here on the side in place of this handle and using the battery as the guard for the cables, but I have not figured out the solution yet, and I may give you guys a little update when I do. Regardless, this is how I've been using it for right now. I wanted to give you guys this video so that you can see how people are actually using this camera, and hopefully give you some ideas on if you're looking to get a camera like this, or if you have one and you haven't gotten a lot of time to use it, how you can kit it out to better suit your needs. So guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please leave a like down below. And if you want to see more videos like this one, please subscribe and leave a comment letting me know what you want to see next. And I hope to see you guys soon. Thanks guys. Have a good day. Peace.